In order for you to succeed in a niche, it's okay to repel people. If they unsubscribe, if I lose followers, I'm not going to take that to heart. I'd rather, like I said, I'm very, very protective of my energy. I really focus on the people that are following me still in my space.
A huge lesson in that is you work out on social media. What is easy for you to create? So chasing the I want this style and I want that is great, but what's something that you can do? And I think you mentioned this earlier on, you test. So I think in the beginning, there's that element of testing what works. So if you're not cracking it, then you're never going to know what actually works.
I've started my YouTube channel. I've started in the very, very early days, but I'm using it not as a growth content, but as more nurture.
You're not giving up when it gets too hard or when you're like, oh, hang on a minute, I've only had 20 views or 50 views, which I'm sure you hear all the time from people.
Yes, yes, not giving up and figuring out your messaging is.
Hi, Evita. It's great to have you on the Lundberg podcast. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so excited. Finally, I'm here. I'm super
Yay! We've been chatting for a while. I've been following your journey for actually probably nearly since the beginning, maybe the last just over a year. You've been, what, 18 months building your business?
Yes, 18 months since I started.
It made me laugh when you came online as well because we both got the light colored memo for a blazer. If you're listening to this, we're wearing very similar things, which is nice. We've got great taste. Well, I've been following you. I know there's like over 500,000 people following you on Instagram. Can you tell people, for those that maybe don't know, who you are and what it is that you do?
Mhm. So I'm Evita. I'm a social media strategist. So what I do is I help business owners grow their audience on Instagram, but also through that be able to grow their business as well. So visibility, but for business growth.
And it aligns so much with personal branding. I was saying just before we came on that I share your platform with a lot of my clients, not all of them, going how to build on Instagram. I've seen a little bit of a change, and maybe we can talk about that in terms of Instagram and do the same principles apply to LinkedIn. We can talk about that later. But I want to really get into first, what was the catalyst? Because you talk about the fact that you transitioned from corporate and this career into your own business and into a platform, a social media platform. So what was the catalyst that made you go, but I've had enough?
Yeah, so actually this goes back to 2020 when I watched this girl on YouTube. Like I was just, one Saturday afternoon, I was just browsing YouTube, and this girl came on and she was like, I am making so much money on Instagram. And I was like, what? Is that a thing? Like, I mean, I've got a really good corporate job. So I was like, oh, I'm quite interested, but I don't really know what to do. Like, I don't know the online space. That's really completely new to me. But I thought, okay, if that girl can do it, then why don't I just try? And that really is the start of the journey. And then what I did then was I like, okay, if I don't know online business, what is, because surely there's a transferable skill from being in corporate, because I've been in corporate for many, many years. So I thought, okay, there must be a transferable skill. What is it that I'm good at that I can somehow bring into the online space? So I thought, okay, I mean, I can do buying and selling all day long. People pay me a lot of money in corporate to do that. So I thought, okay, why don't I just do that? Why don't I start with that on Instagram? But ultimately, the goal is to build a business where I have the freedom to like be able to spend time with my family and be able to go to different places whenever I want to with them, build memories with them. That was really the goal. But I didn't think that, okay, if I start a service-based business, then I don't feel like I know the online space yet at that time. But what I thought, okay, what's one thing I'm good at? Product. Okay, let me start with that. Evita Social started 18 months ago.
Yep.
But my online journey from like the beginning started in 2020 from a YouTube video that I saw. Because if that girl can do it, I know I can because I'm such a hard worker and I'm such a grafter. And I thought, shall figure it out?
I love that how just one moment in your life of going one afternoon, finding this video going, it changes your entire future and your family's future and the things that you do? Because I know that through what I've seen, which I know sounds quite stalkerish, but it is through it, we share it online that, you bring your family into it, the things you've been able to do since building your business, like you mentioned about traveling, but they're all part of what it is and the opportunities and everything that kind of goes with it. So
Yes.
I think maybe kind of let's diving into maybe kind of this Avita social, so to speak, in the last 18 months. And what are some of the mistakes that you see? Women that are starting business. I think predominantly your clientele is women. Would that?
Yes, women. And a lot of them really are from corporate as well, because they see me with my story and they're like, okay, like, you know, you've done what you've done. Maybe I can do it too. So
The inspiration. They've been
inspiration.
proof. Yeah, I love it. So what are some mistakes that people make then when they're starting out that you learned, that you didn't
Giving up too easily.
make? Mm,
Giving up too easily. Like, I got to where I am, and maybe to other people, Avita Social was an overnight success, but it isn't, because it started, like I mentioned, in 2020, but I just kept going. And when you've got that inner knowing that it works, it will work. You don't know how, but it will work.
mhm.
But you just gotta kept going, and the action, just 2, like, small actions every day that will lead you towards that goal, even if you don't know, like, how, just keep on doing, and don't be scared to fail. Like, people just give up too easily. Oh, I've only got 200 views on this. Oh, I haven't, like, I laugh sometimes because they'll say, "Oh, Evita, I've started doing this, like, challenge thing. I've posted like 3 times, but I've got no engagement." I'm like, really? Like, like, you have to detach yourself, especially with social media. Like, there's a lot of experimentation, like with Instagram. Like, if you're like, okay, I wanted to grow in social, there's a lot of experimentation involved because constantly people, you know, consumers change, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, I need to constantly experiment. A part of like my content strategy is a small percentage of it is like experimenting and not attaching yourself to the result, you know? And
Mm.
just so it's a lot of um detaching, I would say, and also um analyzing. Like, I always say Instagram is a numbers game.
Yeah, it
It
really
is.
is. And people don't track it enough. I feel that they expect it.
Mhm, mhm, and it's not just about the followers, because people go, "Oh, it's easy for you to say because you've got a lot of followers," but when I first started, I didn't really focus on the followers, because people can grow on Instagram, but not a lot of them can convert it into a real business.
And I think that was kind of one of the questions that I was going to actually ask you. So I'll touch on that now is about converting followers into loyal customers or people that are going to buy because they're two separate things. I
Yeah.
know on my page, I've got people that follow me because I'll share things sporadically about Dubai or my travels or whatever, but they're never going to be my customer. But there are people that follow me that are going to be. How would you convert those in that, or how would you encourage those that are sharing content to look at that angle of converting?
I always post intentionally. Like, I don't just post randomly. I do testing, yes, but it is with intention. It always leads directly or indirectly to one of my offers. I don't sell on my feed, but I can guarantee you that in every single post, it's leading to one of my offers. So I have a clear path, like, where as soon as, because Instagram is a big traffic strategy for me. As soon as they land on my page, and as soon I needed to capture them and be able to nurture them, from them hearing about me. So I do like a lot of getting them into my email list, and then on the email list, I get to I nurture them. I have a free community, and when they're ready to buy, when they're at that stage that they're ready to buy, I'm here you know? So it's not just follow me, it's at the top of funnel strategy.
And I love what you said about getting people to your email list. Is you're using Instagram strategically, that it's one platform, but you don't control it, you don't own it.
Yep.
And a huge part has got to be use it for the purpose that it is, but drive them back to your list.
Yes.
How that's something that you've done, but I think people don't always see that. What are some of the advice you would give to someone beyond get them to your list? How would you do that?
So there's 3 things that I really focus on: traffic,
Yeah.
nurture, and then conversion. Traffic would be a lot of my content is designed to attract people. And once they're in that space, then they go into the nurture phase where I do a lot of DM conversations to get them into another stage where I can nurture them even more if they're not ready. You know what I mean? So I'm not just thinking about this content is just gonna get, I don't know, 100,000 views. You know what I mean? So I always make sure that that content, yes, it's going to get 100,000 views, but let's capture the people in that, you know, in that space. Because not all of them are ready to buy immediately, especially with social media being so crowded.
I think I heard some stat like only 3% are ready to buy your product or service like right
Mhm.
now today. And then there's people down like it's so small. So that nurture piece
It
is
is.
huge.
It really is.
This wasn't the question, so if you don't want to answer, it's okay. But how many people have you brought onto your mailing list
So
versus how many is on your following?
So I clean my mailing list a lot. So
Yeah.
I don't just say like the numbers of the it's there. It's great to see. So I've
Mm.
got like around 40,000, but
Oh,
but that's gradually cleaned. You know what I mean? Like I don't
yeah, 100%.
I literally delete. If you're not talking to me for 3 months, we do a lot of, trying to win them back and everything. But you know, it's just the nature of the business, isn't it? Like, some people will not stay, and that's fine. That's fine. I'd rather focus my energy the people that are staying, so
Yeah. I remember going to a conference years ago, and Grant Cardone said that him and his team had a celebration when someone unsubscribed from his mailing list because he said, well, they were never going to buy from me anyway. And then they were taking up data stats and affecting the algorithm and the reach beyond that. And it was a real aha moment for me listening to that, going, wow, when you just position something a different way, going, yeah, actually, it's true. They were never going to buy from you. It's okay. Not everyone's a buyer, you mentioned right now, or they're never going to be a buyer. It's okay.
yeah, and yes, in order for you to succeed, and I always believe that in order for you to succeed in a niche, it's okay to repel people.
Yeah.
If they unsubscribe, like, if I lose followers, I'm not gonna take that too hard. I'd rather, like I said, I'm very, very protective of my energy. I really focus on the people that are following me still in my space? So, yeah.
I think a huge part of connection and drawing to your page is that you're very open, you're very honest, you share a lot of value, like a huge amount of value on your page. But I think that's also a big part of your personal brand. This is who I am, this is my family, this is where I travel, and this is what I do. How has that opened up maybe more opportunities to
Mm,
you as a business?
yeah. I mean, when I first started, I was growing extremely fast that I didn't have time to go, okay, how do I want people to perceive me? But I had no choice, and to be honest with you, I had no choice but just be me, because I'm like, "You know what? If they like me, they like me. If they don't, then, I will just focus, like I said, my energy in that." Um, I just had to be I start messy actions. I do a lot of messy actions. I've always been, if I've got an idea, I'm gonna run with it. Like, I can think of a product idea right now, and tomorrow I'll start the ball rolling and speak
Like,
to people. That's how I am sometimes. I just thought, you know what, I'll just be true to myself. And there was a time when I looked at other people going, oh, there's so many people teaching Instagram that are better content creators than me, better at editing, better at doing other things. But I'm like, no, I'm going to lean into what I do best. I take complex strategies into really simple ones. And you know what? I'm fine with that. And I've grown my account through that. So why am I trying to chase for this cinematic look? And, like those editing, the great editing. And I'll be like, oh, I wish I can create content like that. But it's not me. So I'm like, hey, I'm just going to create it the way I create it. Really simple, but full of value. And I think that's what people liked?
a huge lesson in that is you work out on social media what is easy for you to create. So chasing the I want this style and I want that is great, but what's something that you can do? And I think you mentioned this earlier on, you test. So I think in the beginning there's that element of testing what works. So if you're not cracking it, then you're never going to know what actually works. But the piece on from that is once you keep trying, what is natural to you? And how do you build upon that style of editing, that style of storytelling, that
Yes.
style of real content? Like, I see some people who've grown their accounts and they're faceless. Like, who would have known 10 years ago that faceless accounts would have been something that would be a thing?
Yeah.
Versus people that just do 6, 7 seconds reel with writing on it. And it's just people.
Yes.
I mean, you've gotta find your way. I mean, who knew that we would all be behind the scenes with B-roll and it would be the thing that it is?
Well, I remember I was not that confident on camera when I first started. And I'm like, yeah, but I know I have to step out of that comfort zone because I needed to show up on social, but I want to make sure it's aligned with how I feel, like and I took baby steps. I took baby steps. When I first started my account, I did B-rolls, that was it. You could see me in B-rolls, I was like, "Okay, I'm a little bit comfortable now, I've got this," and then I started doing a 3-second intro because I was, like, not comfortable yet, so I started doing the 3-second intro,
Wow.
and then once that's done, then I kind of started building up on that, so it doesn't have to be full on, "Yeah, you're the face, straight away, go do this." No, take your time, take your time.
I think that's great advice because I know many of the women that I work with, they're reluctant to stand and speak on and they'll get better at it, but like you say, build it up in the way that's a little bit out your comfort zone. You don't need to go massively out your comfort zone when you first start.
Yes, and I do every week, I do extra hard, like, so if I can master, like, say, for example, I've mastered B-roll, and I was like, "Okay, I've mastered that, so let me go and, um, go out of my comfort zone again and do, like, a 3-second voiceover, and then 3-second speech," and then it slowly became, talking in my stories, and don't get me wrong, to this day, I find it really still difficult to talk on camera. Like, I'm fine with speaking in a group of people, I'm fine doing it live, but for some reason, me and the phone, just like, if it's just me and the phone, I'm like, I just freeze.
That's so interesting. I remember someone shared a great tip with me years ago about recording, and they'd always said, talk to the camera while you're doing something else. And I
Exactly.
know that you shared, by the way, a brilliant reel recently, and I'll have this playing for those that are watching, about the different types of hooks that you can start your reel with, whether that's a car rant, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yes, yes,
Um, you had putting your makeup on. I've seen quite a
yes,
few people doing that, but talking to camera as you're doing
mhm.
something. Walking into set, walking out of set. These were some great tips where I think maybe takes a little bit of the pressure off of going, right, what am I going to say to everyone today?
Yeah, it's like because I'm so used to, in corporate, like you have to be like prim, proper, sit down meetings, you need to be careful on what you have to say and all of that. And then now I'm like, and I'm such a perfectionist when I'm recording on my own, and I'm like, no, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. So doing other things, like you said, like getting ready, cooking or something, it makes you real as well. It makes
Mm.
you real. And I've worked with so many people helping them grow their account. Like there was this lady, she teaches menopause, right? She teaches menopause and biohacking menopause, which I thought was brilliant, and she's been stuck. I think she's been stuck on like 25,000 to 30,000 for a while. She worked with me few weeks ago, and I said, "You know what? All you've got to do, because you've got great content. You're the expert on this. What we need to tweak are like the way the things that you say in the first 3 seconds. The things that you say matters so much, and like visually and all of that. Let's change that." And then she did, and honestly, she'd had if anyone's doubting if you can still grow on Instagram, she'd grown to like 20,000 in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, wow, I love
By
it.
little shifts, just by sharing, you know, just by changing and tweaking the words that she uses in the first 3 seconds.
How to be more memorable. I actually just did a podcast on that about being more memorable, and it's the first 3 seconds
It is.
that make the difference.
Yes, it really, really is. It's the same content. I said to her, I went through all of her content. I said, you know, you're the expert. I can tell by all of this, but I have to get to 10 seconds until I know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? I showed her, like, look, watch these first 3 seconds, but by that time, you've lost people's attention.
Mm.
Mm.
Mm, mm, mm. So I think people that are watching and listening to this are going to be inspired. I know they are for sure. But I think there's people that are still kind of sitting on the fence. Maybe they're nervous about leaving their corporate job, which is something that you've done, or they feel that Instagram, you can't grow on Instagram. I hear that a lot. So what kind of things would you say to that woman watching or listening right now?
That it is possible, that you've got to do something. You know, when I first started, I didn't know anything about online space. I asked my now 14-year-old daughter to show me how to create a reel or TikTok, you know, because I was like, don't know how to do this. Can you show me? So it's stepping out of your comfort zone because the biggest fear for me was if I stayed the way where I am now, I'm just going to be the same, you know? So I'm just going to be like this. I have to do something to change my life, you know, because if not, I'll just be in the same space working 9 to 5 or working overtime and all of that. It wouldn't change. So I have to do something different. And despite, you know, I still don't enjoy content creation, if I'm being honest with you. I love strategizing. I love analyzing and all of that. But when it comes to recording myself, not a big fan. But I know it had to be done because,
Yeah.
you know, like you said, personal brand. You gotta show up, and even if you don't know how to, it's practice. Little things, like I've shared the little steps that I did, to really like show up with confidence. Because I wasn't like that at the very beginning.
Yeah. And it's just having that you've got to just keep trying it. And you back to what you said in the beginning about not giving up when it gets too hard or when you're like, oh, hang on a minute, I've only had 20 views or 50 views, which I'm sure you hear all the time from people.
Yes, yes, and not giving up and figuring out, um, like figuring out your messaging as well, because it's not just about, you know, like what you say in the first 3 seconds, but the foundation of getting to like, what is your message? What do you stand for? You know, and it's also like, you know, for me, I believe in to stand out on Instagram, you need to niche down. Really
Okay.
do. And you know, and yes, you can pivot. Yes, you can change like down the line once you've attracted people, especially if at the beginning, you do need to niche down. And I strongly believe in that. And it's not, like I said, it's not just the 3 seconds, it's also the niche, like finding your voice, finding your message.
Can you share some examples of maybe clients that had quite big target audience and then niche down and sort of maybe some of the results? Because I think that's inspiring as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I've had quite a few. I was working with this lady. She first came to me when she was like she wanted to do grief, around grief, because she'd experienced a loss, she dealt with grief really well, all of that. And I'm like, okay, well, are you ready to talk about grief, or are you ready to like, because we do need to talk about that in your content. And she goes, no, I'm not ready. And I'm like, okay, I respect that. And with me, right, I always, when I work with people, it needs to be aligned with you. You can't just create content and it doesn't align with you, because that's not sustainable, you know? So I say, okay, now like let's unpack what do you want to do? If not grief, if you're not ready yet, that's fine. Because that, you know, when you're ready, you can then help people do, you know, deal with that. But right now, that might be a little bit too raw. So what is one thing that you're like really good at? What's one thing that people need? What's like an urgent problem that you can, you know, that you can solve? And then through a lot of digging, through months of creating content, because you got to create content, because it's through creating content that sometimes you figure out what your niche really is.
Good point.
Because she was creating a lot of content. She was like, Avita, this doesn't resonate with you. And I was like, that's fine. That's fine. You don't need to carry on doing that if it doesn't resonate. Why don't you try different angles? And by testing, she was then able to go, you know what? I really speak and resonate with corporate women who needs help with communication. She was
Wow.
doing different things. It was great from corporate women because she's got that experience, she's got the training, like she's got like the PhD around it and everything. And I'm like, fine, let's ed but it took her months to get that. She created so many content until she settled for not settled, but until she figured out corporate was her niche. And another thing, lady that I've also worked with, her transformation is just incredible. And I've shared it in on my page as well. So she started and she was like, okay, I wanna be a transformational coach. Like she studied and she's done training and stuff. She's a highly successful corporate person as well, has left the corporate world, but built her incredible business outside the corporate. So she's done that. She felt like she had a life's purpose. And I'm like, okay, we need to niche down. She was like, no, I don't really want to niche down because, I want to speak what's in my heart. And I'm like, great. But if we're trying to address everybody, we won't be able to really specifically speak to that one person. And you won't be able that relatability, because that's really important, that connection. But sometimes you just gotta let people do their things. I'm like, okay, you do your thing. And it took her probably, I'd say, 11 months or yeah, 11 months or maybe a year. She messaged me and she's like, Evita, I felt different. And I think it was like 4 weeks prior to that, she was like, I'm giving up. She was crying. She's like, I'm giving up. This isn't for me. I've invested everything, da 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 da. This isn't for me. And I'm like, okay, why don't you just take a break? You know, like take a break and really figure out what you want. If quitting Instagram is what you want, then that's fine. you know? And then she came back, she goes, I'm not a quitter. I've done this. And I was like, let's go. And I think it must have clipped for her the speaking to that one person and the hook. And then she did that and her account just blew up. So now she could create 6 pieces of content in just one day based on what's in her heart, but still speaking and serving that type of person. It's to do with helping women who were in a narcissistic relationship really empower and be the best version of themselves, because she's gone through that journey and she's helping women do the same thing. And it's just incredible to see all of these transformation. And she's very clear in who she speaks to, and your audience evolve with you.
Mhm.
I'm all about building that relationship because maybe later on I don't want to teach about Instagram anymore. But it's the starting point that they get to know me. You've got your audience, then sometimes they stay with you.
I think a huge part of, building a brand, building a business is you often serve the person that you once were, which I think some of the great case studies that
Yeah.
you've talked about here is that
Yes.
person that you once were. But even as you pivot and you evolve, you build upon the foundations of who you were. And like you said, some of the skills have transferred over to corporate into what you're doing now. Um, so it's never really starting from scratch. It's just
No.
building on
Well,
your skill set and everything that it is that you are doing. Um, if someone's building a personal brand, was there one thing that they should be doing? Because I think Instagram, you could sell product, actual, because you've got the shop on that. But if
mhm.
we're talking personal brand, what's one thing they should be doing?
People may not agree with me. I still think that they need to choose an area at that point where they can be really good at, and they're going to be the go-to expert for that.
Yeah. How transferable then do you think the content that you're putting out on LinkedIn, sorry, on Instagram can transfer to the likes of LinkedIn and YouTube? Because one of my frustrations is that reels are so short-lived. Now I know you could put them on to shorts and stuff like that, but if you create a piece of content and you put it out on YouTube, People are still watching videos that I put out 15 years ago. You
Yes.
would never have that on Instagram. So
Yeah.
what's your kind of take on the longevity of the content you're creating versus the time you're putting in?
Yeah. Can I share my thoughts on YouTube, which is a big revelation for me?
Yes, I'd love to.
Yeah, because I always obviously you can grow on YouTube, perfect, that's amazing, but I always thought YouTube was a growth engine, and I never really touched on YouTube because I'm like, okay, I've got Instagram as my growth thing, but really because it's a long form content, and like you said, people get to know you more, and because they can spend more, they're very intentional, they can spend more time with you through YouTube. So I'm actually using YouTube as nurture. So I'm starting like I've started my YouTube channel. I've started, it's in a very, very early days, but I'm using it not as a growth content, but as more nurture, you know?
Okay. So there is a space you feel for it in your funnel as well.
100%. That was something that I was missing because especially with, Instagram coaches and social media coaches out there, that it's becoming, there's so many of us, right? So many of us out there. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to stand out? Like, if they want to get to know me more, then I have like a channel that they can go to. They can go to and really get to know me without me having to spend more time with them, as one on one. So in my funnel, Instagram is my attraction, like my traffic. Then they get to nurture, which is my email list, plus YouTube, plus the community, and then then my conversion. But I am like YouTube is like I think I attended a conference and I met these guys and they were doing like a lot of money through YouTube, but they don't have a lot of YouTube followers. They're like probably like 100 or even less than that. But they were converting people in their DMs using DM and YouTube, and they don't do sales calls for a 12K product.
Oh, that's inspiring when you kind of hear that sort of thing as
I
well.
was like, what? I am missing YouTube. That I'm missing YouTube.
Well, and I think that's interesting to hear that, also not all your eggs in one basket, so to
Exactly.
speak.
Exactly.
I think in there as well. So transferring, I guess, practice as well on YouTube is a great place to practice what you did
Yeah.
plus doing.
Yes, yes. I find that, say, if you've got a long form content, I always would probably start with a long form content, and then how can you break that down to short form content that you can create like on Instagram for, because reels, and I think they need to go back to the long form because that's like I always say, short form attraction, long form nurture, and then conversion.
Yeah, YouTube's a funny one. I remember I signed a client, this would maybe be 18 months ago, coming up for 2 years, and she booked a sales call. And I had assumed that because she'd come through YouTube, I didn't have a lot of personal branding content on YouTube at the time. So I had figured that maybe she was interested in something else. And no, we had a 10-minute call. She was ready to sign up with me. She went, "No, I watched 5 of your videos on like the only 5 I had on personal branding." And she signed up from YouTube with that long form content.
Mhm.
And I also read, was it a podcast I saw? I think it was potentially a Daniel Priestley, and it might have been Stephen Bartlett, a podcast where he talked about the 7-Eleven 4, and people who are buying from you need to consume at least 7 hours worth of content. A great place to do that is YouTube.
Yes, 100%. Like, I agree. I'm still in my early days with YouTube, so but it's definitely a strategy that I'm moving forward with, There's only like you can't just get viewers, but you need to funnel them into like nurturing them to get to your conversion. So that's what I use Instagram purely to drive traffic and credibility. If they check out who's Evita, then they look at my content, they'll be like, wow, it's, she's generating content of value. And then, they then, if they wanted to get to know me more, then they can go into YouTube, into my community. And then like my programs are also designed that will help them towards their journey. So if you're at the start, you can start with this. And when you're feeling a little bit more, okay, I want to learn more about sales, and you can go into the next step. And then if I want to work closely with Evita, then they have another step. So it's been designed that way. So it's really taking into account the client's journey.
Mm.
Mhm.
What's the trends? What's coming up? Have you got any insider info for Instagram or where you see it's going?
I think storytelling. I know you probably have seen this, or I don't know if it's just me because I know I'm like my feed is all about like storytelling.
Yeah.
But storytelling is such a big trend at the moment.
Yeah, I see it too. And we've adopted it as part of our strategy as well at the moment. How can we voice over, tell the story, make it personal?
Mm. And I always say with a story, like of course it is your story, but at the same time, know what's in it for people. You know, like you do the story, but it's almost explaining a concept in a story.
Mm-hmm. That's
Mm.
the key to making it work on social media because
Yeah.
it is about you, but it's also got to be about the value piece as well. And it,
Or about the other person, because people
yeah,
are, selfish. They want to watch it purely for them. So
yeah.
I know it's our story, but yeah, and there's a lot of like retention with story as well, rather than just by explaining. So, so yeah.
Yeah. So good. So what's next on the cards for you?
Me.
Avita's personal
Yes,
brand.
my personal brand. Yes, I have my programs where I want to help as much and people as I can with really simplifying and understanding social media. So this is how, when I explained about the journey of like what you said about it's the person before you who like you're helping
Yeah, the person you once were.
and you
Yeah.
wanted you once were. Yes. So I'm like I have a big thing about building generational wealth for my children. So I'm documenting that out of everyone's eye, just like with me until I'm ready. And I really want to be able to build that generational wealth through investment portfolio. And that's what I wanted to share next is you know what? You can do it. I started with this and this is where I am now. You
Ooh,
know?
I like that.
That's what I
You did 18 months. I mean, we've hit seven figures in the 18 months, which is amazing. Congratulations. So being able to reinvest that, to show people what it is that you do with that and how the family brand, I guess you could say, hit the next version of Succession.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it's about like you said, personal brand is super important because I'm not going to teach Instagram forever,
Yeah.
and then as I grow and develop, I'm going to take people along with me. So I'm already documenting that. Not for people to see yet because I'm not ready, but when I am, it's there.
Good for you. I love that. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for giving up your time. I
Oh,
loved it.
yeah.
It was a little mini masterclass in Instagram slash a touch on YouTube, but I really enjoyed that. I know that those that are listening and watching, leave a comment. And yeah, how can people find you?
On Instagram, it's Evita_social. I've got tons and tons of resources on there, or send me a DM. I personally reply to every single DM. So
Love it.
say hello.
Thank you so much. And maybe when you visit Dubai, you can
Yes,
say
hello.
hi the next
I
time.
will do 100%. Thank you so, so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Welcome.
Thank you.